our gratitude doesn't have to be something significant or worthy, but that practice, I think, is so helpful because it's warming our brains up to feeling more gratitude. And especially, a lot of times I think we can feel gratitude towards more material things. And there's not necessarily something wrong with that, but I think that it's really important to allow ourselves to feel gratitude for non-material things in our life and the big and the small, and really just honing our brains to practice that.
Stay connected to gratitude. Hit the follow button right now and join thousands of listeners tuning in each week. We're the Gratitude Seekers. Come join us. Hi, Gratitude Seeker. Welcome to a new episode of the Gratitude Podcast. Our guest today is a listener of the Gratitude Podcast, and she also runs a company focused on empowering women to achieve financial independence. And we'll be talking about how we can incorporate the practice of gratitude into the financial aspects of life. Caitlin Muldoon, welcome to the Gratitude Podcast.
Thank you, Georgian. It's my pleasure to be here.
So let us know a little bit more about you, about the work that you're doing.
Sure. I will start by talking a little bit about my career, and I guess it serves us to know that when I was growing up, I didn't have a huge academic focus of what, like I noticed with my peers around me. I didn't have a big drive in terms of what I knew I wanted to do with my life. And that continued into late high school in the States. So many people, especially in my generation, it was a big goal to continue on to college or university after high school. And that's what my peers were doing. And so that's the track that I was motivated to be on, even though I didn't know exactly what I wanted to study or what I wanted to do with my professional life. But I sort of went with the flow, and I did go on to university, and I got a job after that. And it was a pretty good job. I was able to live independently. My job was able to pay my bills. It was certainly not a career path that I had envisioned previously, but I felt that it would be interesting for me because I was able to use my liberal arts education in the technology and business world. And I was able to learn from a lot of really talented people. And I was able to dabble in a lot of different projects. So it was a technology consulting gig. And I wound up really thriving at that job, and I stayed on that track for over a decade. And I realized after I became a mother that I wanted to find a career that was really flexible for me. I had really enjoyed working my way up in my career, but I also realized that as soon as I knew that I was becoming a parent, my goals started to shift a little bit. And rather than being really focused on my career, I realized that I wanted to be able to have a lot more focus in other things that I wanted to do in my life. I knew I wanted to spend time raising my child. I wanted to spend a lot more time with my husband as we were becoming parents. I wanted to spend more time just being able to think about the things that I wanted to do more. And because of that, I started to make plans in my head to make a shift and to try and figure out, how could I find more flexibility? And that took about a year and a half to actually come up with the courage to make a shift. And I did. I left that job and I started a job with a startup. And I was really excited about this opportunity and felt like I would be doing really meaningful work. And then I quickly realized, as many people do if they enter the startup world, that there was absolutely no flexibility in that career path. And it was a really challenging time for me as a pretty new parent. Um, I wound up staying with this company even after I had my second child, and even when COVID hit, I was with this company, and when COVID hit, we had two young children at that time, a 1 and a 3-year-old, and both my husband and I were working full time, pretty grueling hours. And we wound up pulling our kids out of the childcare that they were in because we didn't know what to expect with COVID, and we were just unsure about how to keep our family safe. And so we pulled them out of childcare. So we had two young children running around our home while we were trying to work full time. And it was just such a challenge, and it was so defeating for me, especially my experience being a parent with this company who didn't have a lot of other parents and didn't have a lot of flexibility when it came to parents and really any sort of life outside of work. And so I found myself constantly trying to show up and kind of pretend that I didn't have kids in the background, and really compensate for the fact that I was also trying to spend time entertaining and caring for my children. And it led to some pretty big burnout for me. And I eventually made the decision that I just need to leave that company. And just to backtrack a little bit, about 8 years prior to that, I had made a decision to really start building up of sort of a financial nest egg on the side of my career. And I had been able to take advantage of some of the benefits offered to me with my jobs. So I was investing in a retirement account. I was contributing to that as a portion of my paycheck every other week. And I also started to set aside some additional savings just to have for whatever I thought I might need to spend some money on in the future. And ultimately had decided to buy a home, which was something that really motivated me, I think, because I didn't have a lot of family around. And I felt like if I could buy a home, it would give me a sense of stability that I think I yearned for. I yearned kind of to have some family roots around me. So I knew that the place where I was, Colorado, is where I was living, and I really love Colorado, and I wanted to stay there. So buying a home there for me meant having some additional sense of security and stability. And after I did that, it kind of set me on a path of doing some real estate investing down the road, even though I was not expecting nor intending to do that. But when I met my now husband, he and I at the time were both talking about wanting to move further into the mountains. And when we were finally ready to do that, I was able to keep the house that I bought, and I started renting it out. And when I realized that was a good side business for me, I kept doing it. And it gave me a really good goal to pursue. And long story short, I wound up repeating that process and became an owner of several different homes that I was renting out in Colorado as well as in some other states. And because of that, I was able to have an additional financial safety net for later on when I did feel this intense burnout with my job and this intense yearning for just wanting to be able to spend time with my children without guilt. And I am very grateful that I was able to have financially the option to say, you know what, I am so tired of this. I need to leave this job. And And so that's what I did. And that was a really big decision for me at the time. But all of that to say that it eventually led me to realize how fortunate I was to be in that situation and how unique it was, because most people are not able to find themselves financially in that situation where they can say, I have this big choice to make between spending a lot of time in my career or spending more time with my children. And I actually can afford to make the choice to spend more time with my children. And it's something that I knew that I was so fortunate to have, and that I wanted to help other people realize how to build a path like that. So it wasn't right away. It took me a couple of years to kind of weave this other path together, where I decided I wanted to really share that message. And I started Rising Fem Wealth with a business partner to make it our mission to really help women understand their path to financial independence and really learn the strategies to get there, and be surrounded by other women who understand some of the challenges that go with that, especially some of those challenges that are unique to women, and be surrounded by others who are supporting them, and being able to kind of normalize that goal of I want to be financially independent, no matter what my career goals are, no matter what my life goals are. I just know that I want to be able to support myself, and to be able to make decisions, such as what if I do need to either leave my job because of it's not providing me with the work-life balance, or the freedom or the options that I want it to be doing. So that is what led me, along kind of an opportunistic career path into some challenging times, and then ultimately into founding the work that I'm doing now with Rising Fem Wealth.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful mission, and I think uh, what you just did in your life story, that I think it's beautiful from a gratitude perspective. You took some action a few years ago so that you can be grateful now. What I mean
Mm.
by this is the fact that you thought about things in perspective, and you thought about what you wanted, and you made some brave choices, even though you had some good opportunities. I know through my own example that the process isn't quite easy, and yeah, I think there are so many decisions of this sort. I'm talking about financial decisions that can make us feel grateful in the long run. And
Mm.
yeah, I think this is a really important perspective to look at.
I like how you framed that, um, in the context of time too, because I think that's something that is such a real challenge for all of us, really, is to understand what to delay. What if we really want something, what are some of the sacrifices that we might need to make now in order to delay these feelings of real satisfaction. And especially in the world that we live in, I think those feelings of satisfaction, they, we can have them instantly through, uh, whatever we think is our default lifestyle, and whatever we think is kind of potentially bringing us joy in the moment. And I think so often those moments of joy are kind of fabricated by, we're busy. What can we do to make us feel a little bit better? A lot of times that means, what can we buy to make ourselves feel a little bit better? And it's something that I've discovered with my work, is that, we can actually build a more joyful life for ourselves, and we should focus on defining what that would be before we start to look at what our financial goals should be, because we shouldn't just try and save money just for the heck of it. It's really important for us to understand why we're doing that, and to be able to look at that longer time frame to understand what will actually bring me joy, next month, next year, in 5 years. What will bring me joy as I get older beyond those 5 years, and really understanding the plan, that the action plan that we need to take to kind of build more of that joy into our lives. And then of course, practically speaking, to understand the financial plan about how can we, support that financially. But I absolutely think it makes sense that so many of us just kind of we're caught in our daily lives, and they're busy, and we're doing what we need to do in order to survive. And it's really hard to say, today I'm going to make a decision, to not give myself this or not do that, because that's going to play into a larger plan. And I think that sometimes the busier that we are, the harder it is to make some of those decisions, because, naturally we're wanting to give ourselves what we need in the moment, because we need to be able to survive that day and that schedule.
Yeah, exactly. We tend to be so focused on the things that are happening right now that we need to react to, that we fail, unfortunately, in some cases, to see the bigger picture and to think about, okay, why are we doing all of these things? And most importantly, from my point of view, is the fact that there might be better things out there for us if we think ahead, if we um, have a plan for that's not just for the next few days or few weeks, but it's yeah, thinking ahead quite a few years maybe. So
Right.
yeah, I think this is a really interesting thing that we tend to do. And I think gratitude plays a really big role here, because if we manage to live more with a feeling of gratitude, we feel the need to buy things impulsively much less, and we can stick to a plan uh, much easier. I know that you have
Mhm.
experience with this, so I would love for you to let us know more about how this process works.
Sure. And I want to emphasize, what you said too. And I think that for me, gratitude really comes from a connection, and making sure that I have a connection to myself, having a connection to others, and having a connection to nature. That's something that I have found about myself um, when I'm finding a struggle to feel gratitude in my life. I really try and focus on connection to those three things. And going back to how I shared, a little bit about my background, and um, I think a lot of what I could see as a trend is I was often not connected to myself, and I really do love to be. I'm pretty social. I love to be connected to the people around me, and of course, just being social doesn't mean that you are connected. But I think that being connected to others comes a little bit more easily to me than being connected to myself. And I think that that was a really big reason why, after, I was experiencing such great burnout in my career, I one thing that I didn't share was a big um, point in my life where I felt like it was um, I felt like I did not have a lot of direction, and I felt a lot of regret. And that was after I left my job. And ironically, I, was feeling worse than I had felt before I left. And I had hit this goal that I had been planning for And yet I wasn't finding a lot of joy in realizing that goal. And I think it's because I was just so disconnected with what it was that I wanted and what it was that brought me joy. And ultimately, it was finally going back to that and allowing myself to understand that I could ask these questions of myself. What is it that I want to do? What are the things in my day that fill me with joy and give me a lot of energy, and how can I spend more time doing those things? And instead, I was thinking about all of the things that I should be doing. I really need to be spending all of these moments with my children. I should be doing this for them. I should be doing this for our family. I should be doing this for my house. I should be, working on these projects. And I did not find at first that I really was worthy of removing myself from that kind of default situation and asking myself, what is it that I want to be doing? And having that connection to myself ultimately is what allowed me to realize this is the kind of life that I want to build for myself. And even going down to the very day, what kind of day do I want to build for myself? And being able to then build a routine around that and even put into building blocks some bigger things. I mean, ultimately, we wound up moving, my family and I, to a different part of Colorado. We actually moved to this mountain town that was always kind of a paradise for us. And I don't think I would have come to that decision to really say, let's do this. Let's put the plan in place to, pick up our family and move there and build a life there if I wasn't looking internally to understand, what are the things that are going to make me happy and what kind of life do I want to live? And then how can I create the actions to live that life? But there was so much more than just a big physical move. It was also exactly how I spent my time and who I was intentional about seeing and how I wanted to develop myself, ways that I wanted to grow, hobbies that I wanted to really lean more into, and creative practices that I wanted to spend more time on. And when I finally was able to kind of start defining some of these things about myself, it allowed me to even have much more purposeful goals and even much more purposeful financial goals. And it's a practice that I have since refined a lot. And I use that practice with all of my clients as well, because I think so many people come to me with this worry of, I don't have a lot of money, or I don't know if I have enough money. And how do I know that I'm going to have enough money to be able to retire and provide for my family? And while those are really important asks, I think that what is missing is that pause to understand, we have this big message externally that you need to have all of this money and just keep growing as much money as you can so that you can be secure. But why are we doing that? What specifically is it that you want your life to look like? And you need to be able to define that so that you can then come back and say, okay, how do I create that life? What am I doing today to create that life? What should I be building for in the future in order to create this life and make it richer and really experience what I want to experience? And that comes with more than just a financial plan. It also comes with understanding the actions that we need to take. What is missing? You want to incorporate this hobby in the future. Why not do it now? What part of your schedule now needs to change in order to start pulling some of these things in? And then in parallel, that's when we can understand, okay, how much does it cost to do something like this? And how can we make sure that, we're providing for that in the financial plan? And, I will say, Georgian, I think that one big discovery moment that a lot of my clients have, which is something that I had, is that a lot of us are we have these chaotic schedules. We might even be working a job that has, you know, at its core, it satisfies, how we want to be serving the world, but it's also tacked on with all of these other tasks that really bog us down. And so we start to feel like, okay, I just need to work until I can afford to retire, and then I won't have to do this anymore. And I think that causes us to lose sight of what our goals are. And so many of my clients come to realize that their goal is not actually to say, I need to be done working entirely. It's to be able to say, actually, I want to be able to work a little bit more on my schedule. And what does that look like? And therefore, is it something I can achieve at my current job? And if not, I need to go and find another way to achieve that schedule. And therefore, how much money do I need to bring in every month in order to support the life that I want outside of that? And it doesn't necessarily mean, I have to just work and work and work until I have this huge amount of money and then I can step away. It's actually, okay, wait, we can actually make that transition happen a lot sooner and actually see that you're living this life that you wanted to live a lot sooner than this big goal in the future of retirement.
Yeah, totally. And I think uh, by using gratitude and seeing the things that we already have in our life that are great, we can build on that. And we tend at times when we had enough to say, okay, I want to change my life and do things very differently or make really big financial decisions based on that. But when we are a bit more balanced and we see that there are things that are okay that we can just improve or we can make so that it's easier for us to do those things that are important for us, we can build on that much easier, isn't it?
Oh, yes, absolutely. And for me, that was all about coming back to that connection to self and just not even understanding what it was that I felt was really improving my life in that day to day made it a real challenge to incorporate those things that were improving my life and really intentionally seek them out every day. And that's something that doesn't necessarily cost money, unless those things that we really love do require us. Maybe you love to go out to lunch, and you have a favorite restaurant and a meal that you love to order. And that's fine because it's great to have something really quantifiable, and it's great to be able to say, okay, this is a known amount of money to be able to build into that plan. But I think so much of it too is I know that I my body needs a certain amount of movement every day. I know that I need to be outside for periods throughout the day. And I personally have recognized that if I'm inside at my desk, for 5, 6, 7 straight hours every day, that it doesn't feel good anymore in my body. So being able to break that up and getting outside and, kind of for me, experiencing a little bit of connection to nature and allowing my body to move, even if it's for just a little bit at a time, that helps me feel better and it helps me feel more connected. But just really getting to know what are those things for us, because if we don't know about ourselves to understand what it is that brings us joy on a daily basis, then how are we going to build a life of joy no matter how much money one has? You can aimlessly uh, try to achieve a certain amount of wealth, but if you haven't done the work to really understand what kind of life feels the wealthiest, then that all of the work to build up those financial numbers really doesn't mean anything.
That's so true. So it comes down to self awareness, to being able to know who we are, what's important for us, what works for us, for our bodies, for the way that we function properly, and to find ways to to incorporate that into our life.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah. And,
that's
and
beautiful.
and then really doing it, because I think that's a hard part too. It's really um, being intentional about building that time into our day. Um, you and I were talking about having chaotic schedules, and it I think that's very normal nowadays, and to be able to kind of stop that and say, wait, this is my normal schedule, but I know that I need to build in time for this and this and this. And how do I do that? And most likely, there are some things that will fall off the schedule, but it's really important that we are intentional about what we want to do, and then we take the action to incorporate those things.
Exactly, exactly. And I believe, of course, gratitude is one of those must haves uh, for our mental health, for our even for our wealth journey. What are some tips that you can share with us on incorporating gratitude?
I think that it's such an important exercise, even when we're feeling stressed and busy, to just kind of sit and find what are some of those joyful moments that you have. What are things that you love in your life, especially those that are not tied to material things. Um, I love when gratitude doesn't have to be something even, you know, uh, something that's even worthy of gratitude, because sometimes I think we feel
Mm,
like things have to be um, worthy of our gratitude. But I, when I'm sitting and finding a moment where, I've reminded myself to sit up and put my shoulders back, and just feeling grateful for that feeling that I get in the middle of my back when I straighten my shoulders, or the feeling of the the pillow below my feet, and what that feels like on my skin, and just being really grateful for that feeling. Or just a moment that I've happened to look out the window and I see a bird flying by, and I can just feel really grateful that I've witnessed that. um, our gratitude doesn't have to be something significant or worthy, but that practice, I think, is so helpful, because it's warming our brains up to feeling more gratitude. And especially, a lot of times I think we can feel gratitude towards more material things. And there's not necessarily something wrong with that, but I think that it's really important to allow ourselves to feel gratitude for non-material things in our life, and the big and the small, and really just honing our brains to practice that, but also because that invites so much more connection into our lives. Whether you're connecting with yourself or someone else, or with nature, I think that those little moments of feeling gratitude are really important.
yeah, definitely. I think as a society, we tend to think about gratitude as okay, I'm gonna be so grateful when I achieve this big thing. And even though we might be when we achieve big goals, life is a marathon. Is
Hmm.
it isn't just about um, the destination. It's also about the journey. And I love the fact that you mentioned these kinds of moments that we all actually experience one way or another. We all get to share and to we are all able to enjoy them if we choose to.
Mm.
And yeah, it's something so simple that we just tend to forget, but we can also remember. And this is the beautiful part. And it's something that we all do, like you mentioned, with getting our shoulders back and feeling good in our bodies after doing that. It's such a small moment. It's something so simple that we can do in most situations. And yeah, I think it's a really beautiful perspective that we can take on gratitude.
And you mentioned, Georgian, the tendency we have to really just focus on these bigger, greater things. And gosh, isn't that true for just every part of our life? And I think about that too from a financial perspective, because I think there's so much stress, so much financial stress that people have. And it's often because they have these big goals in their mind and they're trying to achieve those. And it is really hard to stay motivated towards these really large goals, which is why one of the practices that I really try to focus on is breaking down our bigger goals into much, much smaller bite-sized goals that are closer to us, and we can feel a lot more motivated to do the work to achieve those. But also it's, just when it comes to the financial stress that so much of us feel, I think that we are failing to have gratitude for what we have provided for ourselves and some of the things that we have done, even from a financial perspective. And one tool that I love, and I wish everybody could try this if they were experiencing that level of defeat, of financial stress and feeling like they're not hitting their goals. And it's this tool we use called 30 Days of Financial Gratitude. And I'd love to share it with your audience too. It's something that they can actually find on our website. We've made it available to listeners of the podcast at risingfemwealth.com/gratitude. And it's just a great tool where every day you're reflecting on a prompt to allow you to feel more of those smaller reasons for gratitude. And in the context of finances as well, because I think that's an area where oftentimes we can shame ourselves and find so many reasons why we should not be proud and grateful for some of the financial moves that we've made to date. And I think it's really important to have that reflection and to be able to shift our mindset a little bit, and offer more of that gratitude in our lives even when it comes to the financial goals that we're building towards.
Exactly. So thank you so much for being here with us, for sharing this generous offer, and yeah, for being so present and for sharing your wisdom on the Gratitude Podcast. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here.
Hey, Gratitude Seeker, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this interview. I really appreciate it. And if you could think of one person that would also benefit from it, share it with them. It might actually be the inspiration that they need to make their day or maybe even their life much better. Thank you so much once again. This has been Georgian Benta. Don't forget to keep seeking and spreading gratitude.
Life is a workout, and Smoothie King is here to help you power through. Whether you're grinding out bicep curls or muscling the couch across the living room, crushing morning miles, or sprinting through back-to-back meetings, Smoothie King has fuel to help you maximize your workouts, own your recovery, and elevate your game. Give your body the energy, protein, and power it needs with a lineup of delicious smoothies made to help you conquer your goals. Only at Smoothie King.